Hi everybody, this is going to be probably a 5 to 10 minute video going over the attachment paper requirements and instructions. And so the attachment paper is here. I'm looking at the syllabus, so some of the details are here in the syllabus. And so the essence of this paper is taking the theoretical concepts and empirical research that we discussed in relationship to attachment and applying it to understand your everyday life. And so that's kind of a theme in this class, is that I hope that you're able to take the theoretical concepts and research that you're exposed to in class and apply them to the real world. So if your concept paper or your service learning paper is obviously doing that also. But in this case, I want you to analyze your own life rather than just sort of thinking about everyday issues that other people may be facing, which is really the core of the concept paper and the service learning. And so it's 5 pages. Every time we do a paper in class, it's double spaced, 12-point font. And basically, you can look at attachment at any point during your life. So that could be from infancy to childhood to present day. So it's your choice what you want to analyze and write about, which relationships you want to analyze and write about. One caveat that I'll sort of say here is that I am legally obligated and probably ethically obligated to report any sort of crimes or impending danger people may be in. So things that might have to relate to abuse, and those are just any sort of form of abuse, let's say childhood abuse, physical, sexual, etc., and also any sort of violent physical behavior that's going on in your relationships, whether you are the perpetrator or the victim, obviously. Those are both information about crimes. So if you reveal any sort of criminal behavior in your papers, I would be obligated ethically and also legally to report that to authorities. In addition, if I get a sense that you're in imminent danger or you're putting other people in imminent danger, so it works both ways. So if you feel like you're in imminent physical danger, or you reveal that you may put somebody in imminent physical danger as a perpetrator, I would have to report that also to authorities. And so I just want to let you know before you write this, those parameters. And so given this, again, you can analyze any point in your life, any relationships that you want. And the core of this is there's sort of 2 essential parts. One part is to describe the attachment concept that you want to use to analyze your life. And so, or I should say your experiences, it's not like a life analysis, but your experiences, your attachment experiences. You should select ones that you think are the most useful and the most meaningful to discuss. You don't need to give a full review of attachment theory and research, because that would be more than a 5-page paper in and of itself. So you should only introduce concepts and research findings that are relevant to what you want to analyze. You don't have to cover concepts that you don't analyze, because this is not a review of the theory. This is you using the theory and research to understand your life. So be selective. Choose those concepts, those findings that you think are most interesting and meaningful in terms of your own analysis in the paper. And then obviously you're going to be using specific examples. So I'm going to put a little highlight here. So, once you have those concepts introduced and explained, you're going to use the specific examples from your relationships. And so you're going to use those specific examples from your relationships to illustrate your points, illustrate the concepts, illustrate research findings. And so that's essentially the two big things, is to show an understanding of attachment concepts and or research, and to further illustrate those concepts slash findings with real life examples from your own relationships. So make sure that you make those links clear. So when you bring up your specific example to illustrate a concept, make sure it's clear to the reader how that example illustrates the concept. Don't make it so implied, or don't assume that the reader understands the connection. Make those connections explicitly in your writing. And then in the final paragraph or two, I would like you to think about how your early attachment relationships affected you later in life. And so in this discussion, I want you to focus on some of the processes that we discussed in the attachment lecture related to continuity and change. And so in this final paragraph or two of your paper, I want you to focus in on those processes again from class that we discussed that relate to continuity and change. So again, the key here is that you're applying these theoretical concepts or observations from research to understand your actual life experiences. So that's basically the core of the paper. And I've posted the assignment in Blackboard. And so if you go into the assignment in Blackboard, you'll see that the due date is Friday, October 23rd. So that gives you about a couple weeks to deal with this. And it's noon. So it's not really bolded here, but if you look here, it's Friday, October 23rd at noon, it's due. And then here's the grading criteria. So 10% will be organization, flow, and clarity of writing. So obviously it's a paper, so you want to make sure that there's a good organization to how you write it, good structure. There's a nice flow between ideas and between paragraphs. And of course your writing should be very clear, so make sure that you're very clear and explicit in explaining your ideas, your thoughts, and analyses in your writing. 20% is about the attachment concepts. And so this includes the research findings, because the research findings are illustrating attachment concepts. So you want to be sure that you clearly present and explain the attachment concepts that you're going to use in your analysis. And here I make the point that you only want to introduce concepts that you actually use in the paper. So don't introduce a bunch of stuff that you don't actually use in your paper. So for example, do not review and define all 3 patterns of attachment if you are not going to use that information in your analysis of your everyday real life examples. So don't have a lot of extra stuff, because your paper's, again, not a review of attachment theory and research. Your paper is using some select and limited amount of those attachment concepts to understand your life. And then 50% will be used in terms of, or 50% will reflect your analysis in the sense of using specific real-life examples to illustrate the attachment concepts. So as I mentioned earlier, make sure that the links are clear and explicit between the concepts and your real-life examples. So don't assume that the real-life example somehow illustrates it just as it is. Make sure that you explicitly analyze and make the connections clear for the reader. And then 20% is examining issues of continuity and change. So remember that your last 2 paragraphs, last 1 or 2 paragraphs I'll say, but you know, you can kind of see that 20% should probably be worth a page probably. So your last paragraph or 2 will examine the links between your early relationships and your life now. And that could be done in different ways. So you can talk about continuity, or you can talk about change, or you can talk about both. So that's kind of why I have the slash there. And again, you want to link that discussion with specific processes, specific things that we discussed in the attachment lecture. And sort of what I'll say about this sort of in finale is to make sure that all names are anonymous. Obviously, I know you, but you don't necessarily need to give names of people, especially if they're relationship partners, romantic partners who I would not know who that is otherwise. And so make sure if you use names that you use fake names, they're anonymous. I will keep all information confidential, except for those things I said about earlier, which are crimes, so abuse or violence that have been committed, or if I feel like there is somebody in imminent danger, I will also break confidentiality. But except for those circumstances, those criminal circumstances, I will not break confidentiality at all, of course. But I want you to, again, make things anonymous for people that you are discussing relationships with. And then there will be office hours by the TAs during the next 2 weeks where they're free to read drafts of your paper. They also know to keep things confidential. They won't share anything from your papers with other people. And then you can also come to my office hours. And in those office hours, I will look at your paper and give you feedback also. So I think that is it for the paper. And I think that this is a helpful little video to get you set with what the paper's like, how to write it, and how to do well in the paper. Oh, I think one last note. Like with any paper, I always recommend that you have somebody read it out loud to you. Maybe you might feel sensitive about maybe this content, but if you can find a friend that kind of knows you and they can read it out loud to you, that's actually really great, because sometimes people don't realize the way that they're writing, and by having somebody read it out loud to them, they can actually hear things that are missing, or they can hear how it sounds, and then they can make corrections to make the paper better. So good luck on the paper, and let me or the TA know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I will see you in class.